Hannah Pearson, welcome to the Tourism Matters podcast. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, all the way from Kuala Lumpur, which is one of my favourite cities. So
Nice.
I'm looking forward actually, because you've been in Kuala Lumpur for a long time, yeah?
Yeah, 14 years. So
Yeah,
quite
so
a
I'm
while.
looking forward to backtracking through your career and seeing what
How I got here.
uncovering how you got here. This is not, as many people I speak to on this podcast, do a gap year or a couple of gap years or something, and then they inevitably wind up going home.
Yes.
I'm interested to hear. So we'll get
Cool.
into that in a moment. But just so me and my listeners can get to know you a little bit better, I've got a couple of quick questions for you to kick things off. So, Hannah, when you're traveling on the airplane, are you aisle seat, middle seat, or window seat? What's your go-to?
It's an aisle seat, and if it's a 333, I'm an aisle in the middle seat because I need to get out. I don't like feeling trapped in. I need freedom.
Okay. And have you always been aisle seat?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not really a window seat girl. No.
Don't
I need my freedom. Don't
not
trap
interested in what's going on out the window.
Exactly. No,
just all right, cool.
Just get me
there. Tell me now. You've probably got a good answer to this. Maybe
we'll see.
When you are on holiday and you're at the hotel buffet breakfast, what's going on your plate, Hannah, or in your bowl? Where are you headed to?
Oh, yeah. The pastries. I am a sweet tooth person, right? So I'm straight in there. Like croissant, I always love to have a croissant just to see, you eat and and I travel quite a lot for work, so you can see the quality, right? The different ones. I look at the jam. For me, that's super important. Like, is the jam just a generic jam? Is it like homemade jam? I think you can tell a lot. And the tea as well, because I'm not a coffee girl. I'm a tea girl. So what's the tea bag situation? These are the things that I'm interested in.
And then are you sort of scoping out the jam and deciding whether you're going to go for it, or
I will go
making
for
a judgment
regardless.
call?
Yeah, it's just like a judgment call over overall quality of the hotel. I feel like you could tell a lot from the jam and from the tea bags. My husband's like, no, it's the size of the TV, but for me, it's the jam and the tea bags. Right? That's how I know it's a good hotel or not.
Anonymous TripAdvisor reviews about the generic jam quality at the hotel. It's got your name written all over it.
100%.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if I feel like I know you any better after that, but thank you. That's that is very British, isn't it?
There we go.
I want to go back to young Hannah, please.
Yes. Okay.
So where did you grow up?
Okay, so I grew up in the UK. I grew up in a small town called Droitwich Spa, which again sounds very English, but it's in Worcestershire. So Worcestershire of the Worcestershire sauce fame, right? So there is like a Worcestershire sauce factory there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there really?
Small, there is. Yeah, Liam Perrins. Yeah, it's where it's from.
What?
Yeah. But yeah, small town. And occasionally make my way to Birmingham, which was like the largest city nearby. Occasionally, right? Every couple of Saturdays or so.
And when you were growing up, did you travel much as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, my parents used to take us traveling quite a lot. Lots of camping trips. So maybe every other year we would go over to France, because of course, super easy to just drive over there, right? So get the ferry there, and then later the Eurotunnel once that had opened up. And just around the UK as well. So I think that really gave me a love. I mean, I loved learning languages. I was really a geeky language learning kid. So I loved that. And yeah, I'm sure that contributed longer to, that passion for travel, right? And wanting to go and see new places.
That's interesting. You're not the first guest that's been a passionate geek, language geek, not a passionate geek. Passionate language geek.
Too, sure. I'll take it.
Quite a few of my guests have been really into learning language when they were either growing up or then at tertiary education. So that's interesting.
Nice.
And so when you finished school, Hannah, did you go on to tertiary education? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I went on to university and I studied languages. So there we go.
Did you?
So I did. I studied French, so I'm sure that was a direct correlation, right, to all of these holidays in France.
Yeah.
But also classics. So that's like Latin and ancient Greek archaeology and all of these incredibly useful things that I use every day, of course.
Yeah.
In my everyday life now. But it was something that I was passionate about. I loved.
So hang on, what were you thinking? What was your career aspiration at that time? Why did you study this?
Right?
No idea.
I mean, no idea. Just like, I'll do it. Yeah. I don't think I really had like a set career in mind. Just,
you didn't?
This is what okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go study this. And then.
So it really was, you really just studied it because it was of interest to you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so what did happen? So you did a undergrad degree?
Yeah, so I did an undergrad degree. I was at Oxford. That was a pretty amazing place to go and study.
Wow.
Just the history of it. When I look back now, I'm like, wow, the dining room that I studied in was built by Henry VIII. So this year or last year, it celebrated its 500th year of founding, right? And it was the Harry Potter, it's Christchurch, but it's a lot of what the Harry Potter Hogwarts dining hall is kind of based on visually.
That's amazing.
So when you look back now, you're like, oh my God, I just had like breakfast there every day.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But at
what
the time,
it becomes
every day. I think generic. I think.
Bet they had good. Oh, was it? I was going to say, bet they had good jam.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was great. And of course, when you study languages, you also have to do a year abroad as well. That's kind of mandatory part of the course.
Okay.
So then I ended up spending my third year of the course in France, in Lille. And I was a language assistant there. So I was teaching English, let's say very loosely.
Yeah.
English to French school kids. So that was fun because it was really, that of course you've been to university, so you've got that taste of independence. And now this is like really independent. You're going off to a whole other country and figuring out how life works.
Wow. Okay. So when you graduated, what did you do? What happened?
Well, I mean, in line with what I was, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go do a year abroad. And I'd already done this language assistance scheme with the British Council in France, but I knew that they had one in China too. So I applied for the China one, this China language assistance program. And the British Council every year, I think they sent out, maybe 50 of us or so, all sent out to all of these different schools, and kind of the school year. So you go out in September. And so I spent a year in Guangzhou in the south by Hong Kong. I mean, and so this was 2007 to 2008, which was a super interesting time to go because it was just before the Beijing Olympics. Although Guangzhou, I think, is something like the third or fourth largest city in China, it was still, as a foreigner, you were still definitely unique and novel. So there's like pros and cons. So, on a fun day, it's great. People are coming up to you. They want to take photos with you. You're like, this is fun. On a not so great day, you're kind of sat there on the metro and you just want to be ignored, but you're very obviously not Chinese and people are coming up to you and it's a little bit more intense, but it was super fun.
Why did you decide to go to China?
I think I just wanted something completely different. And I'd also applied. I mean, Japan does this, they call it a JET program. And they have some kind of similar scheme where you can go and you teach English and things. And I was actually accepted to both. But one of my university friends had applied for the China scheme as well. And I just weighed them up and said, okay, let's go to China together. And at least I knew I had somebody, familiar face, going there with me. And we ended up actually in the same city too.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so I reflect sometimes, like, would my life have been completely different if I got to Japan instead of China?
I love uncovering, a massive part of, why I have these conversations is to sort of, highlight that these decisions that we make in our careers, they're so layered on top of, you literally made that decision because you
just like, friend was there, look fun. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go to China. Let's do it. Just 1 year. Yeah. How tough could it be? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Oh, that's amazing. That's a long way from home.
It was.
Yeah. So a year in China, and then what happened after that? Did you go home?
I did go home. So whilst I was in China, I met who's now my husband. So
wow.
Picked up him along the way.
Good. Yep.
And so he was British as well.
Oh, right.
And we decided along with a friend that we weren't just going to fly back to the UK. Oh, that's boring. We're going to take the train. So we took the train all the way from Guangzhou up into Russia, across to the Trans-Siberian, through Mongolia, through Russia, and down through all of the little European countries, all the way to taking the Eurostar back from France to London.
Wow.
So we did it over, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. Super fun time.
Yeah.
Probably not something that I would ever repeat again, right? And definitely on a shoestring. So it was not like glamour. I remember we were like taking sugar packets from McDonald's, some extra energy in Russia because it was so expensive and we'd not realized how expensive it would be. But it was great, right? It was just
formative.
It was.
Oh, wow. So 5 or 6 weeks. So that's ticked that off the list and don't need to do that again type of
exactly
journey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Done,
cool.
Done.
And so you land back in the UK malnourished.
Malnourished, probably.
Yeah.
Happy to be back in civilization.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, no, I guess I better find a real job. I've had my 4-year degree, that I had an extra year, in China, and then it's like, right.
Can I just double click on that? Is that what you were thinking? Like, were you sort of thinking that you were just having this kind of life experience and fun time, and then you sort of had to work out what you were really going to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was like, okay, well, I've had this time. China was great, but I knew I'm not cut out to be a teacher. That's not something I'm interested in. It was a means to an end, right? To be able to be abroad. And I was like, okay, what do I want to do? And I still didn't have really a set career path in mind, right? It was still like, okay, let's figure out what I'm going to do. So I think I applied for lots of different things like the civil service, MI5, and all sorts of different things. But where I ended up was somewhere that's completely removed from tourism. Is I ended up as the executive assistant for the EMEA, so the Europe, Middle East and Africa's vice president of a locks company. So like door locks. And this is like a company called Assa Abloy. And it is a Swedish blue chip company. So it's actually a massive company. It owns brands like Yale, like HID, like all those access cards you get for the hotels or your condos, all of that.
Wow.
Like it owns all of that. So no one's ever heard of the parent company.
No.
But everyone would know one of their brands because they've got loads of brands.
Wow.
So I ended up being his executive assistant for a couple of years. And of course, it was completely removed from travel. I mean, there was an international aspect in that everybody from the office, hardly anyone was from the UK. It was in London. And so I moved to London, but hardly anyone was actually from the UK in the office. They were from Sweden or Israel or all of these other wonderful countries. So you kind of had that international aspect. And it was fun in a way. This guy was responsible for over €1 billion every year in sales. So it's really seeing business done at like this massive, really high level. They've got all these factories. They've got 32,000 employees. And you're seeing these really high level decisions being made about, okay, do we acquire another company? Do we downsize this one? What do we do? What's our strategy? Digital door locks. That was the thing back then. I remember doing so many slides. Digital door locks. And now it's like just a normal thing. Everyone's got like these in their house. All of this stuff. But of course, like my heart was not really in the door locking world. I was there for a couple of years. It was amazing. It was this formative experience of really understanding business. And the people there were great. They were so switched on. They were, really top class. But I was like, okay, I need to do something else with my life. I want to go. I want travel. I want to do something with travel.
Yeah.
So I applied for different tour operators in the UK, a few different ones, but didn't really get very far with my application. So I was like, Audley Travel, it's massive now. At the time, it was a little bit smaller.
What sort of jobs were you applying for with them? What did you think you wanted to do?
So it was more like kind of like the sales consultant type, putting together the itineraries. I was focusing on Asia. It's like, okay, I've been to Asia, I've been to China,
right,
these other places. So, I think that would be cool. I get to travel. I get to help people build these itineraries. But because I didn't have much experience in that, and I guess it was probably hard to join the dots. Like, okay, she's at a door company now, and door locks, and now she wants to go into travel. I don't quite get it. So I didn't have much luck.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the turning point was my boyfriend. So his family are originally from Malaysia, and his uncle owns a travel agency in Kuala Lumpur. So he asked my husband, I think back in, I don't know, the early 2010s, to come and develop websites for him because my husband's a tech guy. So he went over and we were doing like this long distance thing, right, between London, Kuala Lumpur. It's quite tiring. And eventually he was like, look, just come move to Malaysia. Come here. My uncle will find you a job at the travel agency. And so we had to wait a little while to get visas and everything all in place. But eventually it was all in place. And I said, okay, I handed in my resignation letter to my door locking company and got on a plane to KL.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that time, we didn't know it would, be 14 years later. We said, okay, look, it's a couple of years. We'll see how it works out. Yeah,
wow,
that's how I got into travel and to Malaysia in the same time.
Right. So you went to KL and started working for his travel agency? Yeah.
Exactly.
What were you doing?
Yeah. So I was leading their kind of outbound. They were mainly focused on independent travelers, so FIT. So I was trying to develop that almost into I had this kind of idea of Audley, this luxury, bespoke, customized travel models that I'd seen in the UK, right? And trying to implement that in KL. I think it went to a certain point and we were kind of started, Sardunia was the name of the company, and it started to be seen as this place to go where you wanted kind of customized independent travel. You could go there. So that was fun. There for a couple of years and really learned a huge amount about the travel industry just from that, right? And how the supply chain works and how do you put together a quotation and how do you build a team? Because then we started to build up a team. So then, then you become a manager, which I'd never been. So he then start getting all of those other responsibilities, or how do you manage them? How do you try and guide them through the sales process? And they're learning and I'm all learning at the same time. And the department is growing at the same time too. So it was really fun. And we were given quite a lot of rope, quite a lot of leniency from management to kind of shape it how we wanted to shape it, which was nice.
Yeah. Do you think in some way, was there learnings from your door locking experience? And
don't know whether, probably just in terms of maybe just the professionalism that was there and trying to carry that across, right? But because also that was such a huge corporate company, the Swedish one, and then you're bringing it down to this agency was still one of the biggest ones in KL.
Yeah, right.
But our department itself, it started off, was just pretty much me and my husband. My husband was on the tech side and we had one or two people and then kind of grew. So I think by the time we'd left, there were maybe about 10 of us, and the marketing had also ended up falling under us and all of these things.
Right.
So it was super fun to do that.
Yeah.
To see it grow.
That's very cognizant of the travel and tourism industry, isn't it? That you have multiple hats.
100%.
That's very, which I personally love. I love, not having to sit in my cubicle and just focus on my one task, but just given the nature of our industry and the size of most of the organizations that operate in our industry, we are required to wear many hats and learn many skills. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So you spent a couple of years there.
Yes.
And then you obviously decided to move on at some point. So
exactly. Yeah. So then I decided, it was coming from, I think, a Swedish company, and Sweden is, of course, super liberal, is super flat organization. The CEO could call me up and I could be like, hey, Johan, how are you doing? To a travel agency, like a Malaysian Chinese travel agency that's very hierarchical. So yes, we had freedom, but you have to call the bosses, Mr. Loke, Madam, but whatever. And it just felt a little, I missed, I guess, the freedom that I had of that in Europe. So I said, okay, and got attracted by a shiny digital marketing agency that was opening up. And I was like, all right, great, I'll be your content marketer. But that I lasted all of about 3 months at that. They were a really new business. And it was too all over the place, really not structured. And I am someone who everything doesn't have to be, but to this extent, it was like, wow, because they were new and they were figuring it all out. And, it was a small team, but I realized pretty quickly that that kind of digital marketing agency setup was not for me. So I was like, okay, I need to end it here. I realized early that this is not for me.
Yeah.
So I left. And then I was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I went home back to the UK just for a couple of weeks to hang out with my parents. And whilst I was there, I had an email from a UK tour operator that I'd met and that I used to be in contact with at the travel agency. And he was like, we're looking for a rep in Southeast Asia. Do you know anyone who might be interested? I'm like, me, I would be interested.
Yes, I do.
Yes, please. And so I got on a train, I think the next couple of days, went over to their office and we were like, yeah, okay, let's do this. So for the next few years, I repped for them, covering the whole of Southeast Asia. And that was again really interesting because it was pretty much me in Southeast Asia. They had been a few times, so they had a base. They had some travel agents that they knew, and this is more like a lot of B2B sales.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was to really grow that network and, of course, grow the sales for them. So that, to be honest, was probably what has the base of rest of my career has probably been off that, because it was really going out, growing that network, just throwing myself into cities like, okay, right, Jakarta, calling up these agents. Hi, I'm in town. I want to meet you. I want to introduce this company, cold calling, turning up lots and lots of cold meetings to build those relationships.
Do you think, Hannah, that because sales or business development is often a sort of gateway into, I guess, a more sort of formal tourism career? Like you see a lot of like tour guides that will move maybe from away from tour guiding and into sales or BDM, which I think they're often perfectly suited for. But do you think, did you naturally have that sort of ability to cold call and put yourself out there? And
not really. No, I don't think. I mean, like when I used to be at this Swedish company, I remember if I had to make a difficult phone call, I would like write it out what I was going to say, right? So it definitely pushed my boundaries to do that. And then you find that, actually it's just people. And I think when you get over it's sales, and to more like this is just about a relationship with people and building that relationship. And if you get on with one another and you're there for them, of course you give them good product, good price, and everything else. You guess what? They're going to want to buy from you. So it was kind of probably flipping that script and that.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that message inside, like, I'm not really. I've got to be pushy, blah blah blah, and just right. This is helping them. This is giving them something good.
Yeah. That is an important sort of reframe, isn't it? I guess when it's more sort of relationship building and networking and providing obviously a product that is fit for market, and also I guess that you believe in and are more passionate about maybe than door locks.
Yeah, exactly.
And how did you find that? I'll move on from this role in a second, but how did you find that, I guess, culturally in different Southeast Asian countries? You know, did you sort of have to, talk to me about that?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, of course, it is really different. And so it was interesting because I was almost kind of the bridge, right, between like this UK and Europe tour operator and these Southeast Asians, and even just stuff, particularly for the Malaysian market, right? If you're thinking about Muslim market, which is of course a massive sector, all those sensitivities around food. Does it have to be halal? Do you need halal certificate? In Indonesia, you might not need that. Maybe pork-free is enough. And there's all of these little variations, and just trying to kind of be I guess, the sponge to try and soak that up, and then try to communicate that over to the operator so that they understand what that is. And a lot of trial and error, of course, right? And trying to understand what they really mean by these things. And I mean, some markets are definitely more challenging than others. Like Thailand was always really challenging, just with language,
right?
And Vietnam as well. Whereas obviously Philippines, English, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, I guess, kind of culturally quite similar to Malaysia, so feel at home. But markets like Thailand, like Vietnam, they are, for me, the most challenging ones.
Language-wise,
yes, really language-wise. You mean just even to the level of like practicalities then getting around. And this was, I mean, you'd started to get more kind of the Uber style things in Southeast Asia, but a lot of the time you wasn't. So it's even just navigating to get to these sales meetings.
Right.
Would sometimes be super challenging, and having to like write out the things on a piece of paper or get like the concierge desk to write it out in Thai script or whatever. So I could just like show the taxi driver, this is where I am going, because otherwise it could completely lost or stranded in the middle of wherever. But
kids
it's
these
all part
days
of the
wouldn't get
adventure.
that. Yeah, it is.
It's super easy. Google Translate. Here we go.
Yeah. So hang on, can we put a timestamp on this? What sort of year is this, Hannah?
This is about 2014. Around 2014.
Yeah.
For a couple of years.
All right.
Yeah.
And so you're toddling around Southeast Asia for
toddling around Southeast
a few years,
Asia
did you say?
Yeah, a few years. And then
right.
My husband said he's a tech guy. We decided we'd start a travel startup together. So I kind of left the B2B sales repping side to the side and hopped into this whole travel startup world. Trying to build out. It was like an itinerary builder, and it was fun. It was fun, definitely challenging, something completely different, right? Because I really didn't know much about the startup world back then at all. So just learning, okay, what's VC funding and what's this and what's that? Your customer lifetime value and blah, 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 blah. We went through some accelerator program, which was really interesting in Malaysia as well. So it was fun because it kind of gave me a whole other side to like the online side. So I've kind of at that point I'd done the consumer side, then I gone to do the B2B side. And now it was like, okay, this is the online side. And eventually we kind of got acqui-hired by another travel tech company that we were quite close to. And they did a lot of what they call dynamic packaging. So they provided a lot of the booking engines for airlines. And then when you see that these kind of flight plus hotel packages that they sell, this company was providing the booking system, the back-end booking system to the airlines to do that. So I kind of hopped into, again, a kind of BD sales market, a very hybrid role with this other company to look after all of these different airlines that they had, which again, so there was completely different. So you're learning about airlines, and even within the airlines, they're so different. So one of their clients was Philippine Airlines, one of them was Cebu Pacific. So you're walking into one and it's like really legacy airline, really old, and the other one is super new and online and everything.
Right.
So yeah, it was like another little insight into a different part, and all of these. We talked a lot about APIs and connections and how do you get the hotel supply in, and all of this stuff.
Wow. That sounds like a steep learning curve.
It was. It was. I mean, yeah, luckily the company, again, I mean, they were very flexible. It was fairly, how many were there? Maybe 20 to 30 by the time I left. That the GoPro, that company was, I think, at over 80. It really expanded during that time.
Oh, wow.
But it was definitely an interesting time to learn about all of this. Yeah, the online connections and Google Analytics and all of these things that it probably has helped me to become like a person with many, even more hats than I had, right? Even more of that kind of broad-based knowledge, generalist, definitely generalist. Yeah.
Well, this is something that I always harp on about. You know, it's like every opportunity that we say yes or no to frames in some way our lens and our unique eyeballs that we, look at the world with, and the unique knowledge that we have. And it's just, every time you take a new opportunity, whether it's in a new job or just a new opportunity within your current job to try something different, it just all like layers on top of each other to
100%.
Create who you are. Can I just ask quickly, what made the two of you decide you wanted to start your own business?
I mean, I think we'd always had lots of ideas. And so he just happened to meet the right person who was kind of supporting us with some of the technology, which later on would be the company that acqui-hired us. And it just all came together, I think, at the right time. And we were like, okay, let's do this. I mean, and I guess we're still young, so we're like, okay, it's why not? We'll try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm very, very myself passionate about entrepreneurship in the tourism industry. And I think that it's often not taken as seriously as it should be, at least here in Australia and New Zealand. So I always love to sort of hear, what motivated you to do so. And then have you got anything to say about, I guess, on a personal level or as a human being?
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't want to say awful, but
no,
intense and interesting toll that entrepreneurship can take on you. The roller coaster ride.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I remember us kind of coming to the end where we were, kind of thinking, we were talking about being acqui-hired, and we were like, do we want to do that? Do we want to carry on our own way? And just feeling, you just feel like, have I failed? I mean, of course, I had a happy end, but you feel like, is that it? And then in my current, company now, I guess we'll come to that later. Yeah, it's 100%. It's up and down, and it's relentless. It's really nonstop. Yeah.
Relentless. Relentless.
It is relentless.
Appropriate word.
Just doesn't stop, right? It's like whether you've got kids or your own company, they're both relentless.
Life.
I mean, and of course you enjoy it. It's not like I've been tortured every day, but it just doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop, but it's very rewarding at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
At times. All right. What was the name of that organization that you worked for?
GoQuo. GoQu.
Okay.
GoQuo.
All right.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So you left there.
Yeah. So eventually, So and then so the reason why I left there was that I had my first son.
Right.
And so that was back in 2018, and in Malaysia, you have incredibly short maternity leave. So I had 2 months paid, and I asked for 2 months unpaid, and then that was it. Back to it. But I'd had this feeling that I'd wanted my own freedom, and I wanted my own independence for a while. So I had asked back to this UK operator that I used to work with. I'd found a couple of other clients, and when I kind of got enough saying, yes, we're ready to go, I was like, okay, right, here's my notice. Go and start my own company, and that's Pear Anderson. And so that was back in 2018. So that's 8 years old this year.
What were they saying yes to? What were you?
Yeah, it was the same proposition. So it was repping, essentially, repping them across Southeast Asia.
Okay, got it.
So one, the UK operator, they kind of wanted to come back in anyway. They wanted someone here. And then the other one was a shopping outlet in London that I had been to, and just thought, I think this would be a really good product for Southeast Asians to visit, because it was not upmarket. It was kind of high street brands like Marks and Spencer's and all of these ones. And I was like, this is really, and when you've got the discounts, it's even cheaper, so really cheap stuff. And I'm like, I think Malaysian market would like this, right? So I kind of bugged them like, hey, have you thought about Malaysia as a market? Hey, I could do Malaysia as a market. And eventually they were like, all right, yes, let's go. UK operator, let's go. Here we go. Notice handed in. Incorporated the company.
Wow. Squeaky wheel.
Have to, right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So it was just me for a couple of years. So I had them. I was doing some market intelligence. So I was doing some research for on and off. I'd been working with Visit Britain, the UK Tourism Board, because they at that time didn't. I mean, they still don't. Their closest office to Malaysia was Dubai. So they really wanted to know what was going on in Malaysia and needed someone there. So we'd just write little reports for them. Okay, this is what's happening in Malaysia, and then work together with Catalonia, the Catalonia Tourism Board, on some research as well for them. So they had that kind of side pottering along, and then the repping side. But I was a one-woman show, right? Then January 2020, everything's looking amazing. Got another client signed on. This is going to be my year, guys. And bang, of course, right? Right. So COVID hit. And of course, like it's a complete, devastating on some sides. A lot of the sales repping were like, well, no one's going to move. So we don't want to pay you to rep, which I understood. That completely made sense. I had one client, a Swiss client, who still stuck by me through it, scaled down the hours, but believed, I guess, that it was going to come back. And I kind of had to go back to the drawing board again. So I think what probably made the business was I lent really deep into the market intelligence, the research side of it. So very early on, I'd started pulling together all of these different updates about what was happening in the Southeast Asian travel industry from the news. So at that time, this is February 2020. It was a lot around border closures, right? Because that was what was happening. But the information was really disparate. It was really hard to get an idea, like what's going on, who's open, who's closed, people locked down, have they not? So I was just kind of pulling together this information into one place. And I was reached out and I was just doing that on LinkedIn. And I was reached out to by the LA Tourism Board. And he was like, hey, are you charging for this? Like, can we commission a report from you? And it was, again, one of these like sliding door moments where I was like, either I can charge this guy for it and okay, yeah, I can make some money, or I can choose to make this like a free resource for the industry and consider this like my long-term marketing tool. And I said, okay, right, I'm going to make it free. So I said, no, it's not paid, but from next week, there's going to be this newsletter. So here you go. Here's the link to sign up. And that was kind of the impetus for it. And after that, it's something that I have done, I'm still doing every Sunday evening, sending out this report across these 9 markets in Southeast Asia. But what it did, I think that consistency every week meant that people were reading it. They were looking out for me on LinkedIn. I was getting interviews in the media because people wanted to know what was going on. And it became like this resource where people, I think, really when things were open and shut and lockdown was on and it wasn't. And in Southeast Asia, it was so strict here, I think similar to Australia in terms of the borders, that things really didn't open for a long time. And people, both outside and inside, wanted to know what was going on and to have like this one place to get that info. And my company kind of became that. So it really, I would say at the time, of course, 2020 hit. It was not a fun feeling to your roller coaster idea. Like, it really sucked. It was going to be such a great year. But now when I look back on it, I'm like, okay, well, if that hadn't happened, I would never have created this report. And therefore, I just wouldn't be, well, you probably wouldn't be talking to me now, right? Because you probably wouldn't have, I think you've probably found me on LinkedIn. You wouldn't have found me. And, when I go to a lot of conferences now, in the region anyway, sometimes people come up to me and say, oh yeah, I see you on LinkedIn. Oh, I get your report every Sunday. Thank you. It's super helpful. And the clients who are coming to us generally have come to us either because they've seen us on LinkedIn or because they're on the mailing list and have been getting these reports. So it really has become like this long-term marketing tool that I hoped it would back then. But even back then, you don't know how big it's going to be. You're just like, okay, maybe I'll get a few hundred and that's good enough.
Hannah, that's really, very clever. And almost plays into that sort of sliding doors, like if COVID hadn't happened and you hadn't, I think that's, that's, very, very clever on your behalf. And I think you touched on something there in the consistency. And just, it can be really hard as an entrepreneur in any industry, but just to be consistent, especially if you feel like take a newsletter, for example, you feel like you're writing to no one. Or, writing a report every week. For no one, but you just,
keep plugging away. Exactly.
Wow. So this was obviously 2020.
Yep.
Okay. So I feel like that sort of really changed then the trajectory of the business. All right. So talk to me about Pear Anderson now. What are you up to now?
Yeah, good question. So now there are 6 of us. So again, that changed. So pre-pandemic, it was just me. And probably what changed that trajectory was baby number 2. And realizing, how do I run a sales repping business that relies on me, but I can't go physically do it because I've just had this baby. Okay. So I got somebody in to help me with that. And then I was like, this works. Okay, I can do this. I can have somebody supporting me going out doing the sales repping side, and I can help manage that side and manage with the clients. So gradually that side grew.
Right. Okay.
We signed a Spanish luxury shopping gallery in 2023, I think, Galeria Canalejas. And again, that kind of changed the trajectory that enabled us to grow the team bigger. So we've got people in KL, we've got in Bangkok and in Jakarta as well.
Right.
So that's grown. And I'd say now, a lot of the focus, is still on the sales representation side, the marketing representation side, but the marketing intelligence is a key part of what we do too. And I think it's a kind of nice blend because on the one hand, yes, we can research everything that's going on. And then on the other, we can actually go and speak to the agents on the ground and be like, is this really happening? Or I saw this, is this affecting you? And they kind of feed into one another, which is super nice.
Yeah, that seems very sort of two-pronged. Is there anything at the moment, particularly, and I know that you did a report on workforce, and that's obviously very much in my sphere of interest and this of the podcast. Is there anything that maybe you can comment on from that report or anything in that sphere? Because, most of the listeners are either other industry operators that, need to recruit, or they're early career professionals that, trying to get into the industry or look at what their next career move is. So I'd be really keen to hear what you've got to say about that, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm digging it out from my memory from last year.
Yeah.
Right? But no, so it was about human capital development. It was with PATA, Pacific Asia Travel Association. And I think the key takeaway, like the really TLDR version of it, is that everybody is so disconnected, that there's disconnects between all areas of the industry, right? So between private sector and government, right, and public sector, in how to develop human capital, how to retain staff. Particularly during the pandemic, you would see the public sector enact lots of different policies, but not necessarily in coordination with the private sector, right? They would just announce things. Okay, now we're going to raise the minimum salary requirement tomorrow, and private sector's like, what? How do we do this? Right? So you kind of got that. You've then got a disconnect between private sector and higher education. So we sent out a survey both to young people and to private sector, and we're kind of asking them the same question. And I can't remember the exact stats, but the question was like, how well prepared do you think your course has, or how well prepared has your course prepared you for real life, right? It was phrased better than that. And I promise. And, it was something along the lines of, the majority of the private sector say, no, the course did not prepare these students for real world applications in the tourism industry. And the young tourism professionals are like, yeah, I feel completely prepared. I'm ready for work. And just in that, there's this huge disconnect, right? And of course, there has to be some middle ground, right? It can't be the private sector can expect that, higher education is this perfect training ground for job. I mean, I studied French and Latin, right? That's hardly relevant to my everyday life, right? So that there is that. But at the same time, then there's perhaps he could see like this perception from young people. Yes, I'm completely prepared. That's not really the case at all, right? So it's how do you find the middle ground between those two to educate young people? Yep, this is the course, but actually there's a lot more that you need to learn. You don't know everything yet. And then the private sector to have the patience, like, okay, or for the private sector to have a lot more engagement with higher education and saying this is particularly for more vocational courses, right? These are the areas that need to be addressed. This is what we need to look at. So there were all these different disconnects. It's super interesting.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a global issue, the disconnect between education and what's actually required in industry. And I think everything's just changing at light speed.
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of
I think
we
particularly now with like tech or even around sustainability, right? And those skills that everybody needs around sustainability that people just don't have. And if the industry really wants to, particularly for sustainability, if they want to be a sustainable industry, you have to invest in that time to educate everybody, right? And I think often the private sector, and this is more for, I guess, people who are in the jobs already rather than going into the industry. It's hard sometimes for the private sector to justify that training. Because they say, these people are going to move. Why am I going to invest in my resources? I need these people on the ground. There's already a manpower crunch. How can I? So they've got all of these excuses, but then the public sector needs to step in and make it easy, right, with financial incentives or however it is to incentivize the industry as a whole to up the level of their sustainable education.
Yeah, that is very much a challenge. And I don't know what the stats would be like in Southeast Asia, but I assume it would be similar to Australia and New Zealand. I think in Australia, it's like 95% of all tourism businesses are like micro, less than 20 employees. It's like they just don't have the time or capacity to take their staff away for training or whatever it is. So that is a real issue. And that's so interesting. I've been very exposed to the operators side of that, in that they feel like students come out of tertiary education ill prepared for the job, but I hadn't heard the student side thinking that they are prepared for the job. Yeah, that's really very interesting.
Yeah, really. The majority were like, "Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go."
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and other things too, like around. So we'd asked both private sector and younger people what they would prioritize from a job, or what kind of benefits they would prioritize. And the private sector were like, "Yeah, flexible working." And the young people were like, "No, flexible working is pretty low down. I just want a decent wage, right? I want a livable wage."
Yeah,
And so livable wage was, I think, number 1. And on the private sector, it was number 5, number 6, something like that. So it's just, again, that disconnect between even just paying people what they're worth to be able to get them into the industry is missing. Like, do that and then add all of the nice frills of work from home and flexible and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, all right, it's very interesting.
Hannah, I'm going to stop there because I could talk about this for a long time. That report in particular is focused on Southeast Asia, yeah?
It's focused on Asia Pacific. So
Asia Pacific. Yeah, well, I was going to say
so there's some stuff in there.
Doesn't sound any different to any issues here across Australia and New Zealand.
I think pretty much it's global. That was my...
Yeah. So I'll definitely link to that report in the show notes because operators that are listening, I think, or RTOs, tourism organisations that are listening could really, even if it's just to look at the key takeaways. Yeah, it's really insightful. All right, well, I might wind things up here, Hannah. Have you got anything you'd like to say before we sign off, whether that be a bit of a plug for yourself or any words of advice for people considering the tourism industry as a career or none of the above?
Yeah, okay, I'll do both then. I'll give a plug and I'll give some advice.
Go.
Well, I don't know how well I am to give advice, but anyhow, in the plug, just that I have a podcast, the Southeast Asia Travel Show, so focused on very much travel industry issues rather than where should I go on holiday to Southeast Asia. So you can find that, the Southeast Asia Travel Show, across podcast platforms. And then advice. I mean, more advice, observation. Again, going back to this report from Pata, I think the one thing that stood out, we asked people, why are you in the travel industry? Everyone chose passion, right? They're there for the love. They're there for the passion of travel, the passion of hospitality. And that really stood out. So yeah, sometimes the wages might suck. Sometimes the conditions are hard. But there is this overwhelming, uniting passion for travel, and it's just particularly for private sector and public sector. How can you harness that passion, I guess, with burning out your people? How can you harness that without taking advantage of it at the same time? So that's maybe not advice at all, but observation.
But again, that's global. You know, that's and I mean that's a huge reason why this podcast even exists, because I just love to talk to other people in the travel industry.
Exactly.
And just, hear the journeys that people have taken and hopefully inspire either young people or career changers that, thinking about the tourism industry as a career choice. And also as education for operators and industry bodies that, I think we need to understand the motivations of young people or career changers and as to what motivates them to get into the industry, but also what will keep them in the industry. And that's... Yes. But I will definitely link to the podcast. I've listened to some episodes myself because obviously Southeast Asia, what happens in Southeast Asia is incredibly relevant to the Australian and New Zealand tourism industry. So a really valuable resource for our operators and RTOs here in Australia to hear what you've got to say about that. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time today, Hannah. This has been a really lovely conversation and I hope you get to go and enjoy some nice tropical weather out there in KL, and let's be sure to keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carmen. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.